Hi, welcome to Lies and Secrets channel. We hope you will have fun with us. Enjoy watching. The snow was falling gently outside, blanketing the world in a deceptive serenity, much like the calm facade I wore at our annual Christmas party. Inside, the warmth of our home was filled with the laughter and chatter of friends and family, the scent of pine from our towering tree mingling with the comforting aroma of mulled wine. I stood by the fireplace, my heart racing beneath my festive attire, tracing the cool edge of my wineglass, watching the flames dance. My husband Jacob was in his element, his laughter echoing off the walls, unaware of the storm brewing in my soul. But as the night deepened, the house grew colder and the guests began to leave. My secret weighed heavier, with each departing guest alone in the living room with only the dying fire and our loyal dog Jack for company. The silence screamed louder than the earlier festivities, and then as I sat there, the door clicked shut behind Jacob, signaling his return. And I knew. The night was far from over. The snow was falling gently outside, blanketing the world in a soft, deceptive serenity inside. The warmth of our home was palpable, filled with the laughter and chatter of friends and family gathered for our annual Christmas party. The air was thick, with the scent of pine from the towering tree in the corner, its lights twinkling like stars in the dim light. I stood by the fireplace, my fingers tracing the cool edge of my wineglass, watching the flames dance. My husband Jacob was in his element, his voice booming over the crowd as he recounted some tale or another, his laughter echoing off the walls. I felt a pang of something guilt maybe, or was it just the weight of the secrets I was keeping? My eyes wandered to the corner where our dog Jack lay, his tail thumping softly against the hardwood floor. He was a good dog, loyal and always by my side. But tonight he seemed different, his gaze following me with an intensity that made me uneasy. Party was in full swing and I mingled my smile, fixed my heart racing with each passing moment. The room was a blur of red and green, the clicking of glasses, the soft hum of holiday tunes I caught, snippets of conversations, laughter, the occasional whisper. But all I could focus on was the growing sense of dread in my C*******T, like a storm brewing just beyond the horizon. As the night wore on, the guests began to leave their goodbyes, echoing in the now quieter house. Jacob, ever the gracious host, was seeing them out, his arm around the shoulders of our last guest guiding them through the snow. I was alone in the living room, the fire now just embers when Jack approached. His eyes were dark, almost human in their depth, and there was something in his posture, a tension that mirrored my own. I sat down on the couch, my dress riding up slightly, and Jack sat beside me, his head resting on my lap. His warmth was comforting, yet there was an electric charge in the air. A forbidden thrill that I couldn't shake off. My hand moved to stroke his fur, and I felt his breath against my skin warm and steady. The room was silent except for the crackling of the dying fire, and in that silence my mind wandered to places it shouldn't. The door clicked shut, signaling Jacob's return. I quickly adjusted my dress, my heart pounding as I heard his footsteps approach. He entered, his smile fading as he noticed the shift in atmosphere. "Everything all right?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Just tired." I lied, my voice barely above a whisper. He came over, sitting beside me, his hand finding mine. The touch was innocent, but it felt like a betrayal. A stark contrast to the secret I was harboring. As Jacob talked about the party, about how much everyone enjoyed themselves, I couldn't help but feel the walls closing in. My gaze drifted back to Jack, who now lay at our feet, his eyes still on me. There was a question in those eyes, a silent understanding of something unspeakable. The night deepened, the house grew colder, and as Jacob suggested, we head to bed. I knew sleep would be elusive. The weight of what had transpired, what I had allowed to happen in the shadows of our festive gathering, was a burden I couldn't share, not yet. But as we walked up the stairs, my mind was not on the comfort of our bed, but on the moment when everything changed, when the line between right and wrong blurred into something unrecognizable. The staircase creaked under our weight, each step a reminder of the life we had built together, now tainted by my actions in the bedroom. I changed into my nightgown, the fabric whispering secrets against my skin. Jacob was already in bed, his eyes heavy with sleep, but there was a flicker of something else there, a shadow of doubt. Perhaps L*** sped under the covers, my body tense, my mind racing. The room was dark, save for the soft glow of the streetlights filtering through the curtains, casting long, distorted shadows on the walls. "Something's on your mind," Jacob murmured, his voice a mix of concern and fatigue. "You've been distant all evening." I turned to face him, the lie forming on my L***. "It's just the holiday stress, you know how it gets." But even as I spoke, I felt the truth clawing at me. Desperate to escape, he nodded, accepting my excuse with a sigh, pulling me closer. His warmth was a stark contrast to the cold dread in my heart. "We'll get through it," he whispered, his breath tickling my ear. Together. The word together felt like a knife slicing through the facade I was trying to maintain. I lay there listening to his breathing deep and into sleep, while my thoughts were a tumultuous storm. The memory of Jack's gaze, so intense and knowing, haunted me. What had I done? How could I have let a moment of weakness, a fleeting thrill, jeopardize everything? The night stretched on and sleep eluded me. I got up, careful not to wake Jacob, and walked back downstairs. The house was silent, the remnants of the party still scattered around. I found myself in the living room again, the fire now completely out, leaving the room in a chill that matched my mood. Jack was there, his eyes following me as I moved to the window, looking out at the snow-covered street. The world outside was still a stark contrast to the turmoil within. I felt his presence beside me, his fur brushing against my L***. "Jack." I whispered, my voice breaking the silence. "What have I done?" He didn't answer, of course, but his presence was a comfort, a silent confidant in this moment of crisis. I knelt beside him, my hands sinking into his fur, seeking solace in his unwavering loyalty. But even as I sought comfort, the reality of my actions loomed large, an unspoken confession hanging between us. Clock on the mantel chimed softly, marking the passage of time, each chime a reminder of the secret I held. I stood up, my decision made. I couldn't let this continue. The guilt was too much. Tomorrow I would tell Jacob, I would confess everything, no matter the consequences. But as I turned to leave the room, a shadow moved in the doorway. My heart skipped a beat. Had Jacob heard? Was he there watching? Waiting for an explanation? The figure stepped forward, and it was just the reflection in the mirror, a trick of the light. Yet the fear lingered, a premonition of the storm that was brewing, ready to unleash its fury on our lives. I took a deep breath, the weight of my decision settling around me like the snow outside, beautiful yet suffocating. As I returned to bed, the decision to confess felt like a noose tightening around my neck. The night was far from over, and with each passing second, the dawn of a new day and the revelation it would bring drew closer. The morning light was harsh, cutting through the curtains like a blade, slicing into the remnants of my restless night. I lay there staring at the ceiling, the weight of my decision pressing down on me. Jacob was still asleep, his breathing steady, unaware of the storm brewing within me. Sped out of bed, my movements silent, my heart a drumbeat in my C******. Downstairs, the house was cold. The remnants of last night's party, still scattered around the site of the empty wine glasses and discarded party hats, made my stomach churn. I busied myself with cleaning each clink of glass, a reminder of the laughter that had filled this room, now replaced by a heavy silence. Jack was nowhere to be seen, and a part of me was relieved. I couldn't face his knowing eyes, not yet. As I moved through the house, I found myself pausing at the window, looking out at the snow that had continued to fall overnight. The world outside was pristine, untouched, a stark contrast to the turmoil within. The phone rang, its shrill tones slicing through the quiet. I picked it up, my voice cautious. "Hello." "Hey, it's Isabella," came the cheerful voice of my sister, just checking in to see how the party went. "Did you guys have fun?" I forced to laugh, the sound hollow even to my own ears. "Yeah, it was great. Everyone had a good time." There was a pause on the other end. "You sound off everything." I swallowed hard, the confession on the tip of my tongue. But I couldn't bring myself to say it. Just tired from the late night. You know how it is. Isabella didn't push, but her concern was palpable even over the phone. Well, if you need to talk, I'm here. We hung up and the silence returned heavier. Now I continued, cleaning, my mind racing. How could I tell Jacob? How would he react? The thought of his face, his trust shattered, was unbearable. The doorbell rang, startling me. I opened it to find our neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, her face flushed from the cold. "I hope I'm not intruding," she said, her voice warm. "I just wanted to drop off some of my famous eggnog mix, thought it might cheer up." The day after the party, I thanked her, taking the jar, my hands trembling slightly. She noticed, her eyes narrowing with concern. "Are you all right, dear? You look like you've seen a ghost, just a bit under the weather." I managed my smile tight. She nodded, her gaze lingering a moment too long before she turned to leave. "Well, take care of yourself and give my regards to Jacob." As the door closed, I leaned against it, the jar in my hand, feeling like an anchor. The house seemed to close in around me, each creak and whisper of the wind outside, a reminder of my solitude. In this secret, I moved to the kitchen, setting the eggnog down, when I heard footsteps. Jacob was up, his voice groggy as he called out who was at the door. "Just Mrs. Henderson." I called back, my voice steadier than I felt. "She brought over some eggnog." He appeared in the doorway, his hair mussed, his eyes still heavy with sleep. "That was nice of her." He paused, looking at me, really looking. "You sure you're okay? You've been acting strange since last night." The moment stretched my heart in my throat. This was it, the opening I needed, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I nodded, my voice a whisper. "I'm fine, just need some rest." Jacob stepped closer, his hand reaching for mine, his touch gentle. "You can tell me anything, right?" The sincerity in his eyes was my undoing. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them away. "I know," I managed, my voice breaking. He pulled me into a hug, his warmth enveloping me, and for a moment I allowed myself to lean into him to feel the comfort of his embrace. But even as I did, the secret lay between us, a silent, growing chasm. As he released me, his phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at it, then back at me. "I need to take this work stuff." I watched him walk away, the phone to his ear, his voice low. The moment had passed, the confession delayed once more. I turned back to the window. The snow, now a relentless fall, mirroring the turmoil within the day, passed in a blur of mundane tasks, each one a distraction from the confession I knew I must make. But as the evening approached, the tension in the house grew palpable. Jacob, sensing something was off, tried to lighten the mood with stories from work, but his laughter felt distant, like it was coming from another room. Dinner was quiet, the clink of cutlery the only sound I could feel, Jacob's eyes on me, searching, questioning. I picked at my food, my appetite gone after dinner, as we sat in the living room, the fire crackling. I knew I couldn't postpone it any longer. The words were there, ready to spill out. But before I could speak, Jacob's phone rang again. He excused himself, stepping out to take the call. I sat there alone with Jack, who had finally emerged from wherever he'd been hiding. His eyes met mine, and there was that same intensity, that silent understanding. The door opened and Jacob returned, his face drawn. "That was work. They need me to come in tonight. Some emergency." I nodded, the relief mixed with dread. "Okay," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "He ******, said my forehead, his touch lingering. "I'll be back as soon as I can try to get some rest." As he left, the house felt emptier, the silence more profound. I sat there, the weight of my secret, now a tangible presence in the room. Jack lay at my feet, his head on my lap, a silent companion in my turmoil. The night stretched on, and with each tick of the clock, the decision to confess loomed larger. But as I sat there, the phone rang again, this time mine. The screen flashed with an unknown number. My heart skipped a beat, a premonition of something else, something unforeseen. I answered, my voice tentative. "Hello." The voice on the other end was unfamiliar, yet there was an urgency to it. "Is this Mrs. Jacob? I'm calling about your husband?" "There's been an accident," my breath caught in my throat, the room spinning slightly as the words sank in an accident. I echoed my voice, barely a whisper. The phone pressed tightly against my ear. "Yes, ma'am. He's been taken to St. Mary's Hospital. You need to come immediately." The voice urged the background noise of a busy emergency room filtering through the line. I hung up my hands, shaking the house. Once a sanctuary now felt like a cage. I grabbed my coat, my mind racing with fear and guilt. The weight of my secret seemed to double, pressing down on me as I rushed out into the cold night, the snow crunching underfoot. The drive to the hospital was a blur, the streets eerily quiet under the heavy snowfall. My thoughts were a chaotic mix of worry for Jacob and the dread of what my confession might do to him in his current state. The hospital loomed ahead, its lights a beacon in the dark, snowy night. Inside, the sterile smell of antiseptic hit me as I hurried to the reception. "I'm looking for Jacob, my husband." I stammered, my voice breaking. The nurse behind the desk typed something into her computer, her face impassive. "He's in surgery right now, you can wait." "In the family room." I nodded, my L****, feeling like they might give out. The family room was a small, dimly lit space with uncomfortable chairs and magazines that nobody ever read. I sat down, my coat still on, feeling the chill of the outside world clinging to me. Time stretched on each minute, an eternity. My mind replayed the night of the party, the warmth of the fire, the laughter, and then Jack, the memory of his fur under my touch. The forbidden thrill now seemed grotesque. In the stark light of the hospital, a doctor finally entered, his expression grave. "Mrs. Jacob?" he asked, and I stood up, my heart pounding. "Yes, how is he?" "He's stable now, but he sustained significant injuries. We had to operate to stop internal bleeding. He's not out of the woods yet, but we're doing everything we can." I nodded, tears blurring my vision. "Can I see him?" "He's in recovery. You can see him briefly, but he's not awake." The walk to his room felt like a march to my own judgment. Jacob lay there, tubes and machines surrounding him, his face pale and bruised. I sat by his side, taking his hand, feeling the cold of his skin against mine. "I'm so sorry." I whispered the words, barely escaping my L****. "I need to tell you something. Jacob, when you wake up, I promise I'll tell you everything." The room was silent except for the beeping of the monitors. Each sound a reminder of how fragile life was, how quickly everything could change. I stayed there holding his hand, the confession burning inside me, waiting for the moment he would wake up, for the moment I would have to face the consequences of my actions. As the night deepened, the hospital's quiet was occasionally broken by the distant sounds of medical urgency. My mind wandered back to the party, to the moment when everything shifted, the warmth of the fire, the laughter, and then the silent, intense gaze of Jack. It was as if he knew, as if he understood the turmoil within me. The door opened and a nurse came in to check on Jacob's vitals. "He's doing well considering," she said, softly, offering a small, comforting smile. "It's good you're here with him." I managed a nod, my throat tight with unshed tears. "Thank you," I murmured. Watching her leave the room felt colder, now the weight of my secret like a physical presence. I looked at Jacob, his face serene in sleep, unaware of the storm brewing inside me. The decision to confess was no longer just about guilt. It was about redemption, about the chance to rebuild trust if he would ever wake up to hear it. The night wore on, and with each passing hour the dread of my confession grew, but so did my resolve. I would tell him I had to, not just for my sake, but for the sake of the life we had built together, now hanging by a thread. As dawn began to break, casting a soft light through the window, I heard a slight change in the rhythm of the machines. My heart leaped. Was he waking up? I leaned closer, watching his face for any sign of consciousness. His eyelids fluttered, and for a moment our eyes met. There was confusion, pain, but also a flicker of recognition. "Jacob," I whispered, my voice trembling with hope and fear. He tried to speak, his voice weak. What happened? There was an accident, I said, my voice breaking. You're in the hospital, but you're going to be okay. He squeezed my hand, a small, painful gesture. I'm glad you're here. He managed, his eyes searching mine. The moment stretched, the air thick with unspoken words. I knew then the time had come. Confession was no longer just a burden I carried. It was a bridge I needed to cross, no matter how treacherous the path. Jacob, there's something I need to tell you. I began, my voice barely above a whisper, the room holding its breath along with me as I held his hand, the weight of my secret, pressing down on me like the snow outside. After the party, when everyone had left, I did something I deeply regret. Jacob's eyes, still clouded with pain and medication, searched mine for clarity. His voice was a hoarse whisper. What did you do? I took a deep breath, the words heavy on my tongue. I was alone with Jack, and in a moment of weakness. To let things go too far. My voice broke the confession, spilling out like a dam breaking. I betrayed your trust. Jacob, I'm so sorry. His hand, which had been weakly holding mine, went limp. His face, already pale, seemed to lose more color. You and Jack. His voice was barely audible, a mix of disbelief and hurt. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. Now the truth lay bare between us. I didn't know how to tell you. I was scared, ashamed. But now, with everything that's happened, I couldn't keep it from you any longer. The silence that followed was deafening, filled only by the steady beep of the heart monitor. Jacob's gaze drifted away, his eyes focusing on some distant point beyond the hospital room. The air was thick with the gravity of my confession, the betrayal hanging like a dark cloud over us. I need time. He finally said, his voice strained to think, to process this. I nodded it, understanding the need for space. Yet feeling the chasm between us widen. I'll give you all the time you need. I just wanted you to know the truth, especially now. Just then the door opened and a doctor entered his presence, a stark reminder of the reality we were facing. Mr. Jacob, we need to check your vitals again, and I must inform you there's been a complication. My heart sank. What kind of complication? The surgery was successful in stopping the internal bleeding, but there's swelling around his brain. We're monitoring it closely, but he might need another procedure. Jacob's eyes met mine again, a silent plea for strength or perhaps forgiveness. Say, he whispered, his hand finding mine once more, the grip weak but desperate. I stayed, my own turmoil momentarily forgotten in the face of his immediate crisis. The doctor continued, we'll keep him under observation. If there's any change, we'll act swiftly. As the doctor left, the room felt smaller, the walls closing in. Jacob's breathing was shallow, his eyes closed, and I could see the pain etched into his features. My confession, my betrayal, seemed trivial now in the shadow of his health crisis. Yet it was a truth that could not be undone. Hours passed the hospital room, a cocoon of uncertainty. I sat by Jacob's side watching over him, my mind a whirl of guilt, fear, and love. The morning light had given way to the sterile glow of hospital lights, casting long shadows that danced with my fears. Suddenly, Jacob's eyes opened clearer. This time I need to ask you something, he said, his voice stronger than before. Anything, I replied. My heart and my throat. Did you? Did you love me? When you did it? His question was raw, cutting through the layers of our relationship. I looked into his eyes, the truth of my feelings for him unwavering. I've always loved you, Jacob. That night was a mistake, a moment of weakness. But my love for you has never wavered. He nodded slowly, processing my words. I believe you, he said after a long pause. But trust is something else. The door opened again, this time with more urgency. A nurse rushed in, followed by the doctor from earlier. We need to take him for another scan. There's been a change in his condition. Panic surged through me as they wheeled Jacob away, his hands sping from mine. I followed, my heart pounding the confession. now a distant echo in the face of his immediate peril in the waiting area. Time stretched into an eternity. Each minute was a lifetime of regret and fear. When the doctor finally returned, his face was unreadable. He's stable for now, but we're keeping him sedated. The swelling has increased and we're preparing for surgery. To relieve the pressure, I nodded. My voice lost to me, the weight of the situation crushing. Can I see him? Once he's settled, you can, but he'll be unconscious. I waited the hospital's sterile environment, offering no comfort. When I was finally allowed to see Jacob, he was back in his room, machines beeping his C*****T, rising and falling with the aid of a ventilator. I sat beside him, my hand on his, the warmth of his skin a small comfort. The room was silent, except for the mechanical sounds of life support. I whispered to him, I'm here. Jacob, I'm not going anywhere. As the night deepened, the hospital's quiet was occasionally broken by the distant sounds of medical urgency. My mind wandered back to the party, to the moment when everything shifted, the warmth of the fire, the laughter, and then the silent, intense gaze of Jack. It was as if he knew, as if he understood the turmoil within me. The door opened and a nurse came in to check on Jacob's vitals. He's stable, she said, her voice a soft reassurance in the stark environment. But we need to keep a close watch. I nodded, my eyes fixed on Jacob, his face serene yet troubled. Even in unconsciousness, the room felt like a confessional, the walls absorbing the weight of my words, the air thick with the aftermath of my revelation. The nurse left and I was alone again with Jacob. The silence between us now filled with the gravity of my confession. I watched the rise and fall of his C******T, each breath a reminder of how close I had come to losing him, not just to the accident, but to the truth I had kept hidden. As the hours ticked by, my mind wandered through the labyrinth of our relationship, the good times, the laughter, the shared dreams. Now those memories were tainted by my actions, by the moment of weakness that had spiraled into this crisis. The door opened once more, and this time it was Isabella, my sister. Her face was etched with concern, her eyes scanning the room before settling on me. How is he? She asked, her voice low. Hash's stable. I managed the word, feeling hollow, but there's been a complication swelling in his brain. Isabella sat beside me, her hand finding mine, offering a squeeze of solidarity. And you, how are you holding up? I looked at her, the facade I had been maintaining crumbling. I told him, Isabella, about Jack, about what happened. Her eyes widened, a mix of shock and sympathy. Oh, honey. I couldn't keep it from him, not with everything that's happened. But now I'm not sure if I've made things better or worse. Isabella's gaze was steady, understanding you did what you felt was right. Honesty, even when it hurts, is the foundation of any relationship. We sat in silence, the only sounds, the beeping of the machines and the distant murmur of the hospital. My thoughts were a tumult, a storm of regret, fear, and a desperate hope for forgiveness. The doctor returned, his expression grave yet professional. We're going to take him for surgery now, it's critical. We relieve the pressure on his brain. I stood, my shaky as they prepared Jacob for transport. Can I say something to him before he goes? The doctor nodded, and I leaned close to Jacob, my near his ear. I love you. Jacob, please come back to me. We'll get through this together. As they wheeled him away, the room felt emptier, the space where he had lain now a void. Isabella stayed with me, her presence a small comfort in the vast uncertainty. The surgery seemed to take an eternity. Every minute stretched into hours, each second a lifetime of worry. When the doctor finally emerged, his face was unreadable at first, but then he offered a small, hopeful smile. The surgery was successful. We've managed to reduce the swelling. He's in recovery now, but he's not out of the woods yet. We'll need to monitor him closely. Relief washed over me like a wave, but it was tinged with the lingering dread of what lay ahead. Can I see him? He's still under anesthesia, but you can sit with him. Back in the recovery room, Jacob lay still, the machines around him, a chorus of his survival. I sat by his side, my hand on his, feeling the warmth of his skin, a sign of life, of hope. As the day turned into night, the hospital's lights dimmed, casting a soft glow over the room. I whispered to him stories of our past, promises of our future, hoping my voice would guide him back to consciousness. The night was long, filled with the quiet sounds of the hospital, the occasional footsteps of nurses, the soft hum of machinery. My mind replayed the confession, the look in Jacob's eyes, the silence that followed just before dawn. There was a slight movement, a twitch of his fingers. My heart leaped and I leaned closer. Jacob. His eyes fluttered open, confusion clouding them for a moment before recognition dawned. "You're here," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "I'm here." I confirmed, tears welling up. "I'm not going anywhere." He managed a weak smile, the effort visible. "I heard you before. I'm sorry for the accident, for everything." I shook my head, the tears now flowing freely. "No, Jacob, I'm the one who should be sorry for everything." His gaze was intense, searching. "We'll talk when I'm stronger, but know this. I still love you. We'll figure this out." The words were a balm, a promise of reconciliation, of healing. But the road ahead was uncertain, filled with the need for forgiveness, for rebuilding trust. As the first light of dawn crept into the room, casting a soft glow over us, I felt a flicker of hope. Confession had been made, the truth laid bare, but the story of our life together was far from over. It was a new chapter, one that would require patience, understanding, and an immense amount of love. The door opened and a nurse came in to check on Jacob's vitals once more. "He's doing better," she said. Her voice, a whisper of optimism in the quiet room. "Keep talking to him. It helps." I nodded, my resolve strengthening. As the nurse left, I turned back to Jacob, his eyes now closed but his breathing steady. "We'll get through this," I whispered, echoing his earlier words together. The story of our life, with its twists and turns, its moments of darkness and light, was still unfolding. And as I sat there holding his hand, I knew that whatever came next, we would face it together, with honesty as our guide and love as our anchor. But the path was not just about healing. It was about understanding the depth of our connection, the resilience of our bond, and perhaps the possibility of a future where our love could grow anew, stronger than before. If you feel that this story is meaningful and brings useful lessons, please like and subscribe to the channel to support me.